And yeah, if we can, I have a few slides to, wow, there's a lot of people out there. Hello, everyone. If we can have the first slide. I got a few slides to keep me on track here. So the subject of today's talk is skill as a spiritual path. It's an interesting topic because, to me anyway, because it was a large part of my path, and it's not something that's talked about or written about much in the existing spiritual literature. Also, before we get onto it, I just forgot to say thank you for inviting me back. It's really great to be here. It's great to see everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to Joel for all his support and guidance, and thank you all for your interest. So let's move on to the second slide there. So we'll start with kind of some more technical or academic side of this, and we'll move toward the more spiritual side of it. So this is a diagram that I made for one of my books. I call it the Mandala of Paths. And many of you may be familiar with the three spiritual paths as outlined in various Indian traditions. The path of knowledge, or jnana yoga, path of devotion, or bhakti yoga, and the path of action, or karma yoga. And they're not really mutually exclusive paths, I would say, but more approaches to the spiritual path, or like vectors of approach. Nor are they really exclusive to the Indian tradition either. In the Christian text, The Cloud of Unknowing, the author divides the approach to Christian life into two categories, the contemplative life and the active life. And you could see the contemplative life as bridging devotion and knowledge here, and you could see the active life as bridging devotion and action. So the Christians were very centered on devotion. But they're essentially the same categories, and you can see them in various other traditions as well. And I was trying to map out how various practices fit into these various paths and understand how they were at work in my own path. And I felt something was missing. For two reasons. One, there were these large aspects of my own path, like practicing martial arts for 30 years and my pursuit of writing fiction, that seemed to me to be a large part of my path, but I didn't really understand where they fit in on this map. And the other reason is when I was thinking about these paths, knowledge, devotion, and skill, I started to see that each one had both a focus and a direction. So the knowledge path, for example, the focus is inward and the direction is also inward. In the devotion path, the focus is inward, but the direction is outward towards God or towards the other. In action, the focus is outward toward like doing good deeds or charity, kindness to others, and the direction is also outward towards others. And so when I map this out, I figured there should be a fourth quadrant on this map, and so I added this path of skill. The archetypal practices of which might be considered various forms of artistry or athleticism, but it could incorporate almost any skill if it were pursued to the highest level, because in that pursuit, one would have to face themselves and to push against any perceived limitation. And this would eventually, if continued far enough, the spiritual nature of this pursuit would become clear. So skill is definitely a part of these other paths as well. Like, if you're a priest, for example, performing various rituals could be seen as a type of skill. Meditation could be seen as a type of skill. And so it like the other paths, is just one element of the path. But I do want to say it could also be a path in its own right. And one on this path may not even know that they are on a spiritual path. But that path may become clear to them in time if they follow it far enough. Let's have the next slide there. There's many examples of this. So in Japan, for example, many arts have become deep practices that really are inspired by the spirit of Zen Buddhism. Arts like tea ceremony or flower arranging could almost be seen as forms of meditation. And some martial arts have also been turned into a spiritual path. This gentleman on the bottom left there is Morie Ueshiba, who was the founder of Aikido, who merged his formidable martial skills with his spiritual practice to form the art of Aikido, which he himself described as an art of peace or love. And in the West, we might look at something like icon painting, which was considered a form of prayer and a spiritual practice in and of itself. But the form of practice in this path of skill need not be overtly spiritual. The example I use in the book, Lighting the Sacred Fire, is this race car driver, Ayrton Senna. I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but in 1988, at the Monaco Grand Prix, he drove what was widely considered to be the greatest lap in the history of Formula One and the qualifiers. And afterward, about the experience, he said this: "That day, I suddenly realized I was no longer driving conscious. I was in a different dimension. The circuit for me was like a tunnel in which I was going. And I realized I was well beyond my conscious understanding." And if that doesn't sound like a spiritual experience, I don't know what does. Actually, there's a wonderful documentary about Senna, and I was quite moved by this story of his experience on this Monaco weekend. And I wrote about it. I was surprised recently to look that up and find it was just 12 days before my own awakening. That it was posted anyway. I might have written it a little earlier, but. Okay, so the real question here is, what is it that makes pursuing a skill, what is it that turns it into a spiritual path? Because if you're, for example, just driving or learning to drive or developing your skill to drive, just so you can get around town and manage your day, it's not necessarily going to become a spiritual path for you. But if your driving becomes a way to understand yourself, or a pursuit of perfection, or a way to happiness, or a pursuit of some underlying reality or truth, or a way to face your fear, or to confront the mystery of death, then driving might become more like a spiritual path. And what's going on when you're doing a spiritual practice isn't necessarily what you think is going on when you're doing a spiritual practice. And so, this is something that is happening for all of us. When I looked back on my own spiritual path, I'd say for about 80% of it, I had no idea I was on a spiritual path. But looking back on it, it was all part of the path. Everything. My relationships, my practicing martial arts, my desire to become a writer, my efforts to become good at it. All of it was a significant part of my path. And so, we don't always know the effects of what we're doing. We can set out to do things, but the effects, I would say, are much greater than what we imagine. Yeah. Okay. So there's so many lessons that we can learn on a path of skill, and we're going to play a little game. I'm going to give you an anecdote from my life, and then because these are, some of the lessons that one can learn, but I think they're better illuminated by specific examples. So I'm going to give you a little anecdote, and then you think about what lesson could be learned from this experience, or what spiritual lesson might be a part of this experience. So here's the first one. When I was in middle school, I had a friend who I greatly admired for his creativity and musical talent. And it really inspired me to want to be able to play music. So I asked my parents if I could have piano lessons. My friend played synthesizers, electronic music, and so I wanted to be able to play keyboard. And for about 2 years, I struggled with piano, as a middle schooler. And the thing is I could envision being a great musician. I could envision being to play spontaneously and freely wonderful music. But I really struggled with practice. And as a middle schooler, I just couldn't keep it up. And so my progress at music sort of petered out. Now, what kind of lesson might this be on a spiritual path? Yeah, well, see, you guys have the cheat sheet here. Yeah, commitment. What else? Yeah, humility. Anything that's not on the list? Focus. Yeah. How about effort? Effort, yeah. I wasn't willing to put in the effort. And, as Ramana Maharshi said, nobody succeeds without effort. Here's the second one. All right. I used to play a lot of chess, the board game. My dad taught me how to play when I was little, and was pretty ruthless, beating us continuously, myself and my brother. And it wasn't until I was in college sometime that I was able to beat him after deciding to dedicate myself to doing some study on the game. In the game of chess, I read a number of books about chess and practiced what I had learned and so on. And then one day, challenged my dad and beat him. And there's many different things that you can learn from chess. It's a brutal game in terms of dealing with your mind, dealing with your emotions, because all the mistakes that you make, your failings, your weaknesses, are all there on the board for everyone to see. There's nothing that you can hide. There's no hidden pieces in chess. It's all there. So when you blunder a rook, there's nobody to blame but you. And so at some point, I had this kind of epiphany playing chess. It started by realizing that losing games was more helpful to me than winning them. And the more I played against people who were better than me, the more I could improve. And so I started to enjoy losing games. I started to enjoy seeing how the other player could just annihilate everything that I was doing, And I eventually had this kind of epiphany that winning and losing were equally good. And that the real beauty of chess came from the game itself. The beauty of the game, the logic of the moves, the unfolding of the conflict, and the resolution of the game, whether one won or lost, made no difference. What kind of lesson do you think this is on the spiritual path? Yeah, certainly detachment. Yeah, definitely some wisdom. Some peace of mind. Yeah. How about equanimity? Yeah. Yes, definitely. One's intentions and attention. Certainly humility. Yeah. Compassion. Yeah. Yeah, for oneself especially. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, those are all great. Here's one more. So, in all my years of writing, when I used to write stories and novels, almost every story that I wrote, there would be some point in the middle of the story when I would become absolutely convinced that it was terrible, that this is a complete disaster. I never should have started this story. I don't know how I'm going to get all of these different elements to come together to work, how it's going to come to a natural conclusion. It's absolutely awful. I'm awful. It's a completely hopeless situation. And for a long time, this would sink me into a very dark and depressing mood. It was kind of catastrophic, especially for a larger work. Imagine you spending years working on something, and halfway through you realize it's all been a waste. And but I would keep working at it, determined to just see it through to where it goes, to the ending, whether it be even if it was terrible. I wanted to see it through to the end. And when I continued working on it, as I got closer and closer to the end, inevitably I would come to a spot where I think, hey, this isn't too bad. And often I would say more times than not, I would think, this is pretty damn good. And so over the years, this happened to me over and over and over. And after experiencing it a number of times and noticing that it was happening, it would definitely still happen. But when it happened, I would think, there's those thoughts again. There's those emotions again. It's happening again. It's the same exact thoughts, the same emotions, different story. And I knew that if I just kept going, this feeling would pass. And inevitably did. What kind of lesson do you think this is? Impermanence, what did you say? Perseverance and surrender. Anything else? Self-awareness. Definitely trusting a process. And I would say that's a huge, I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a huge, it's a kind of actually a big point that I'm making in this book, Lighting the Secret Fire, is that there is a process at work. Like I said before, we don't necessarily know everything about it, but there is a process at work, and our part is to engage in that process. How about your thoughts are not real? How about your emotions are not what you are or what's happening. They too are not real in the way that you may think they are if you're caught by them. Okay, let's have the next slide there, Tom. Okay. Here's a few pictures of me learning a couple lessons. You might think the hard way, but actually these were wonderful lessons. So many lessons I learned from martial arts, and I deliberately put pictures here of me being thrown and taking a punch to the face because these were some of the best lessons, actually. And I'll explain a little something about how martial arts practice works, or at least this type of practice. This isn't, what you're seeing up here isn't real, isn't fighting. It's not a fight that's taking place. It's a practice, and there are two, it's a partner practice. One person in this situation is attacking. That would have been me just moments prior to what you see. And the other person is responding or performing a technique. And this role that I'm playing here of attacking and receiving the technique or taking the fall or taking the punches and so on is a wonderful part of the practice. And in many traditional martial arts, this is the role you would serve for maybe the first year or 2 years of practice. That's all you would do is take falls. Attack, get thrown, attack, get thrown, get put down, get locked, get punched, and so on. And it's wonderful. And it's the first place in this kind of practice where you learn to really let go of your desires for the situation, of your desires for a particular outcome, and to just be completely present in the moment because you have no idea what is going to happen next. And you have to just be present and able to move spontaneously with whatever is happening in order to keep yourself safe and in order to help your partner in their practice. And if you can find this same kind of desireless, fearless way of doing the other side of practice, of evading, countering attacks, throwing, even punching people, if you can do that without aggression, without fear, without a desire for a particular outcome, and even with compassion and love, that's beautiful, beautiful martial arts. Egotism is the biggest obstacle in the path of skill, what I would call egotism. And I'll present this question to you. Where, you all have various skills, I'm sure. Where do those skills reside? So many people on a path of skill believe that the skill they are building, they are acquiring, that it's theirs, that it belongs to them, or that it is possessed by the ego. And this is egotism. It's not, this is the big struggle in the path of skill. It's not just dealing with your desires and fears and the emotions of the ego, but with the very belief that you are the doer of your actions, that you are the possessor of these skills, that they're yours, and that they reside in the ego and not in the body or the mind, or even to take it one step higher, that they reside in reality itself. And this egotism is an expression of the same fundamental mistake that's found in the path of knowledge, the path of devotion, and the path of action. And that mistake is taking something that is limited to be the limitless reality. And so in the path of knowledge, we have the obstacle of conceptualism, where we take an idea or a belief or a view of the world, a model of the universe, to be the limitless reality. And in devotion, we take an image of God or an idea of God to be the limitless reality. And in action, this comes in the form of hypocrisy. And in skill, it's egotism, where we take the ego to be the real possessor of our skill rather than reality itself or consciousness itself. And to illustrate this, I'll here's a quote from Ramana Maharshi, who says, "If the ego rises, all will rise. If the ego merges, all will merge. The more we are humble, the better it is for us." And what could be more humble than realizing that everything that you have or can do or experience isn't yours. And it never has been yours. And that the path all along hasn't been a path to enhance the ego or to glorify it in some way or to make it better. Instead, it's been a path to destroy it, really, or to see that it isn't real. You know, I was at a talk by Tulku Jigme Rinpoche about the wheel of samsara. And at one point he was talking about sadhana, or spiritual practice. And he said, sadhana is not to please you. It's to destroy you. And my ears really perked up. When I told this to my martial arts instructor, he said, yep, that's the lesson I got over and over and over and over in his training as well, in classical Japanese martial arts. So, just like the path of knowledge and the path of devotion and the path of action, so too in the path of skill, all these paths self-destruct. Maybe you've heard this before. If you haven't, Joel has a wonderful talk about it called The Path That Self-Destructs. And I like the dual meaning here, actually. You know, the path itself, the practice, does sort of collapse, but also all paths are meant to destroy the self, the small self, the ego, you know, and so all paths self-destruct has this kind of double meaning, which I like. Again, Ramana Maharshi said, all knowledge will have to finally be given up to experience the truth. And keep in mind, he was speaking largely from the path of knowledge. So on the path of knowledge, all knowledge must be given up to experience the truth. And I would say this is equally true for skill, that you could say all your skill must be given up to experience the truth. You know, O-sensei, the founder of Aikido, was famous for saying, "I am the universe. Can you defeat the universe?" You know, and I think a lot of people, and me too, when I was studying Aikido when I was younger, had this idea that because O-sensei said this, he was unbeatable, you know, in combat. Or, you know, he couldn't be beaten. But I think this is a gross misunderstanding of what O-sensei was saying when he said, "I am the universe." And can you defeat the universe? In my view, you know, the real power of O-sensei's Aikido didn't come from him. And that was his great gift. Although he had this incredible level of skill, he knew that his real power wasn't his. It came from the universe itself. And if you are a person who realizes that, even if you are beaten in combat, even if you're killed, you can't be defeated. Remember Ayrton Senna? So on race day, at the Monaco Grand Prix in 1988, he was so far ahead of his nearest rival, Alain Prost, who was also his teammate, in the lead of the race, had the race won. There's only a few laps left. And he was driving so fast, the team leaders were on the radio telling him, slow down, slow down. You know, you have this race won. You don't need to be driving this fast. But he just kept driving like a maniac. And with only a few laps left in the race, he made a mistake and crashed. Ran into a wall and lost the race. And I'm sure that was a huge blow to his admittedly large ego. But at the same time, I think he knew that weekend he had experienced something far more profound than winning a race. So on my own path, you know, I got to this place where I just saw clearly that there was no end to what I was doing, the training that I was doing, the effort to get better, to improve myself, to become more skilled. I just looked ahead and could see there's no effort to it. No matter how good I got, no matter how much I trained, no matter how much I practiced, there would always be room to get better. There would always be a desire to improve more. And I became completely disillusioned with what I had been doing for 30 years, training hard, you know, to try and understand what is this? What is Aikido? What is martial arts? And I was still teaching at the time, martial arts, but I myself had no desire to get better anymore. Actually, ironically, that really improved my martial arts quite a bit. And likewise, I was still writing, but the same, whereas for many, many years, I had put forth effort in trying to write fiction with the idea that it was going to make me happy, that it was going to make me successful. This was, and with just a little bit of success, I realized that too was not right. That there would be no end to that either. And each success would just bring different kinds of problems. And so the same, while I was still writing, I just had no hope that that was the answer to my problems. I remember talking to a friend of mine who had just started training in Sistema, this martial art that I was teaching. And she was very excited about the training, as many people are when they start practice. And I'm sure you've seen that in meditation practice as well. People are very enthusiastic when they start, or can be. And we were having this conversation one night, and she was very excited about the potential for spiritual growth in the training, which was really an underlying part of all the martial arts that I had trained in and was a part of. And again, that wasn't intentional, but it did just happen that I fell into training these martial arts that had philosophical and spiritual underpinnings. anyway, she was very excited about the potential for spiritual growth through this martial arts training. And I said to her, yeah, but she had been to some seminars and things like that. And I said to her, yeah, but look around at the people who we're training with. I said, it's not like they're all attaining nirvana left and right. These people are just as lost as we are. And that was kind of where I just looked out at the sea of everything that I was doing, and I didn't see it as the path that I thought it was. And in that the path collapsed. In fact, at that point, I knew nothing was going to make me happy. No skill, no ability, no knowledge, no act, no relationship, and no achievement was ever going to make me happy. Nothing was going to make me happy, and in fact, nothing did make me happy. And it's exactly this possibility, this kind of conclusion that makes the pursuit of skill a viable or important part of the spiritual path. The possibility that you could realize finally that your whole life and everything that you've been trying to accomplish and do was like one big Zen koan, doing nothing but pointing you beyond. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have. Yeah.
I'm not sure how to ask this question, but it's in there somewhere.
Okay, I'll see if I can recognize it.
Sure, just ask me a question. Yes, that's the one. Many years ago, there was a show on NPR called New Dimensions, Michael Toms. And he would have these spiritual talkers on. It was on KLCC for many years. But one of these speakers was talking about the holy endeavor of work. Work is this holy endeavor. And it struck me very deeply. I know there's there's another view of work is just something we do so we can go do the things we want to do. But there's also something within work as in something that one either does for money, so you can pay for rent or food, or work as in even volunteer work that's not done for money per se, but all sorts of work that with an open eye and an open heart, everything comes up. Oh, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Oh, this didn't respond the way I wanted it to. All pointing back to, well, what do you want? Even though I'm getting closer to that point where I don't have to go to a place to perform actions that they would give me credits for, that I go buy bagels or something. So I'm getting closer to the end of that path, but it's still very fulfilling to be of service in this way. And being of service I guess it's a little bit of a choice. I don't see it as a chore. So it's very rewarding in a way. And the other volunteer stuff that I do, sometimes it's not with a full heart, but that in itself is also pointing back to, well, what are you giving here? What's going on here? Where was it? You've mentioned this, but I'm not quite understanding what happened. What happened for you to go, oh shit, this is all pointless?
So that's the question.
Yes.
There's a couple of different things in there that I might address before we get to that question. But one is that everything we do is a spiritual practice. And if you're just doing it to get credits to buy bagels, that's fine. But if that's your only, that's all you're thinking about, all you're looking at, all you're paying attention to, you're not really engaging in your spiritual practice, whatever it is that you're doing. The other thing is you'll always find things to engage in, So But as far as what happened, I've described this a number of times as coming to the end of all the various karmic chains that are at play in your life. So, at some time when I was younger, I thought, wow, it'd be cool to be good at martial arts. Boom, karmic chain started. At some point when I was young, I thought, wow, it'd be great to, get married and have a wonderful, loving relationship. Boom, karmic chain started. Some point when I was young, I thought, I really want to be a famous writer. Boom, big karmic chain begun. And those are just the big ones. This is happening at every level in your life. All these kinds of various, and I don't want to paint it as negative either. These lead to all kinds of wonderful paths through life, wonderful pursuits, wonderful practices, wonderful discoveries, wonderful relationships. But while they are in play, we are often have the idea that these things are going to make us happy. That at the end of when you get the good relationship, when you are successful in the thing that you want to do, when you attain that level of skill, that mastery, that you will be satisfied, that you will be happy. And so what happened is I came to the end of all those things that were at play in my life. All the various things that I thought might satisfy me or might make me happy came to their end. I became disillusioned of all of them. I became disillusioned of everything. As I said, nothing would make me happy. And so that's what happened. It's not something that I did. It's something that happened. Just by engaging in practice, engaging in your own path, engaging with life in whatever practices the good Lord puts in front of you.
I just wanted to mention this movement practice that I participated in 30 years ago or something called Takatina. And it was this thing where the woman who led it, she was playing some stringed instrument, and we would walk in a circle to the beat of this instrument. And then she would start playing a drum with a completely different beat, and we were supposed to clap to this beat.
Interesting.
Rhythms at the same time. And it was just this amazing practice because the harder you tried to do it and get it right, the worse you could do it. You were stumbling and, but if you just really let go, at some point, it would just start happening. And you could do all these rhythms without knowing how you did it. So, it was just, I just really recommend this movement, this Takatina, because it's a way to bring it about, in these small moments of time so that you can see how that works, how you can just let go and have it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of, a challenging practice. And then that can, through doing it, you see it can only be done by letting go. Yeah. And then it spontaneously happens.
Yeah. But it's a good thing to find out, that it can work that way.
Yeah. In a way, kind of what these things are doing is you're pushing the mind to the limit. Your ability to control things is limited. And the more things you put into play, the more difficult it is to control. And the aim of these practices is to push you beyond your mind so that you can see that your mind is just one element at play, is also just appearing like all the other elements. One of our teachers used to give us this practice. This one's almost more on the line of an impossible task. We would lay on our backs, and with your, I mean, there's many examples of this, but just to give you an idea, with your left hand, you were supposed to trace out numbers, 1, 2, like drawing them with your hand. With your right hand, I'm sorry, I had my hands mixed up. Left hand numbers, I'm already messed up. Right hand, you're supposed to spell your first name, you know. M-A-T-T. You're supposed to do this at the same time. Then with your left foot, you got to spell your last name out. You know, you're laying on your back like a baby, you know, with your arms and legs up in the air. And then with your right foot, you had to count backwards from 99, you know. So you get a room, you know, a giant room full of people rolling around on their backs trying to do this. It's quite a sight. So, yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, 2 hands, 2 feet. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And is this time? Is that okay? So it's 12:30. I understand there's maybe some food, which is great. Thank you. And thank you all so much for the wonderful questions, for your attention, and for having me here as a guest. I'm really grateful. Thank you.